Deep within forgotten woods, shrouded in perpetual twilight, lay a place known only as Whispering Pines. Locals spoke of it in hushed tones, their voices laced with fear and dread. They said the forest held secrets dark and ancient, whispering tales of sorrow and despair. Whispering Pines was no ordinary forest. It was a place where shadows danced with unseen entities and the air hung heavy with an oppressive silence. The trees, gnarled and ancient, reached towards the sky like skeletal fingers, their branches intertwined in a macabre embrace. The forest floor was a tapestry of decaying leaves and fallen branches, damp and spongy beneath one's feet. A thick fog clung to the ground, obscuring the path ahead and sending shivers down the spines of those who dared to enter. It was a place where nightmares came to life, where the veil between the living and the dead was thin and easily pierced. The very air within Whispering Pines seemed to hum with an unseen energy, a palpable sense of dread that settled upon anyone who dared to venture within its borders. It was as if the forest itself was alive, watching, waiting, its presence felt in every rustle of leaves and every mournful sigh of the wind. The silence of the forest was deceptive, for it was not truly silent. A symphony of unsettling sounds played out beneath the surface, a constant murmur of unease. The rustling of unseen creatures in the undergrowth, the creaking of ancient branches swaying in the windless air, and the distant haunting cries of unseen birds all contributed to the unsettling atmosphere. But most unsettling of all were the whispers. Soft, sibilant murmurs carried on the wind, seemingly coming from nowhere and everywhere at once. They spoke of unspeakable things, of ancient evils and forgotten tragedies, their voices weaving a tapestry of fear that ensnared the minds of those who dared to listen. Late on a Friday night, 4 friends, Jake, Emily, Ben and Chloe, stood at the edge of Whispering Pines. Drawn to the unknown like moths to a flame, they sought something beyond the mundane. They had heard the stories whispered in hushed tones at parties, legends of Whispering Pines and its darkness. Young and feeling invincible, they dismissed the tales as folklore. Dare to venture into the unknown, Jake challenged. Nervous glances were exchanged, but none admitted their fear. With trepidation and excitement, they stepped into Whispering Pines. As they ventured deeper into the forest, the sunlight began to fade, swallowed by the dense canopy of leaves overhead. The air grew colder, the dampness clinging to their skin like a second layer of clothing. The path, barely discernible to begin with, dwindled into nothingness, forcing them to push their way through dense undergrowth and navigate around fallen trees. With each step they took, the forest seemed to press in closer, a living entity intent on swallowing them whole. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, slithering around their thoughts like venomous snakes. They could feel the eyes of the forest upon them, watching their every move, judging their every breath. "Do you ever get the feeling we're being watched?" Emily whispered, her voice barely audible above the rustling of the leaves. The others exchanged uneasy glances, each of them harboring the same unsettling feeling. They were not alone in this forest, of that much they were certain. Section 5. Shadows Stirring. As darkness descended, the forest came alive with a cacophony of unsettling sounds. Twigs snapped under unseen feet. The rustling of leaves seemed to follow their every move, and strange guttural cries echoed through the trees, sending chills down their spines. The forest was no longer a place of serene beauty, but a hunting ground, and they were the prey. The shadows, already long and distorted in the fading light, seemed to writhe and pulsate, taking on sinister shapes that danced at the edge of their vision. Faces, grotesque and contorted in silent screams, peered at them from the darkness, only to vanish when they turned to face them directly. "This is starting to creep me out, guys," Ben admitted, his voice tight with nervous energy. "Maybe we should turn back." His words were met with uneasy silence. None of them wanted to admit defeat, but the oppressive atmosphere of the forest was starting to take its toll. Section 6. A haunting melody. As they pressed onward, their steps fueled by fear and curiosity, they began to hear a faint melody on the wind. It was a haunting tune, mournful and melancholic, played on an instrument they couldn't place. It seemed to emanate from the heart of the forest, beckoning them forward like a siren's call. Despite their unease, the friends were drawn to the music, compelled to follow, to uncover the source of the haunting melody. The path, now a faint trail, led them deeper into the heart of the forest, away from safety. "Do you hear that?" Chloe whispered, her eyes wide with fear and fascination. "It sounds like music." They stopped, listening intently to the ethereal melody weaving through the trees. Section 7. Unearthly Encounter. The forest floor sloped downward, leading them towards a clearing bathed in an ethereal, otherworldly light. As they drew closer, the music grew louder, its mournful notes echoing through the trees with an almost physical intensity. It was then that they saw her. In the center of the clearing, bathed in the pale moonlight that filtered through the trees, stood a figure. It was a woman, her long white dress flowing around her like gossamer wings. Her back was to them, her head tilted slightly as if listening to the music that swirled around them. "Hello?" Jake called out, his voice hesitant and uncertain. The figure didn't respond. She remained perfectly still, her presence both alluring and unsettling. As they drew closer, their apprehension growing with each step, they noticed something strange about the woman, or rather, the lack of something. Section 8. Flight Through Darkness. Where her feet should have been, there was nothing. She simply hovered above the ground, her form wavering slightly in the moonlight, as if she were a figment of their imaginations. A collective gasp escaped the friends' lips as the realization of what they were seeing sunk in. This was no ordinary woman. This was something else entirely. Terror, primal and instinctive, surged through them, breaking the spell that had held them rooted to the spot. They turned to flee, their minds screaming at them to escape the clearing, to get as far away from the apparition as possible. But the forest had other plans. The path they had been following had vanished, replaced by a tangled thicket of thorns and brambles. They were trapped, their escape route cut off by the very entity they were so desperate to escape. Section 9. Moment of truth. Panic seized them, their breaths coming in short, panicked gasps as they stumbled blindly through the undergrowth, desperate to find a way out. The laughter of the woman, cold and mocking, echoed through the trees, urging them onward, deeper into the heart of the forest's embrace. The apparition began to glide towards them, her movements fluid and effortless, her eyes glowing with an eerie internal light fixed upon them. With each passing moment she drew closer, her laughter growing louder, her presence filling them with an overwhelming sense of dread. They stumbled and fell, their clothes torn and their bodies scratched by the unforgiving thorns. But they didn't dare stop, not with that spectral figure closing in on them, her laughter ringing in their ears like a death knell. Section 10. Forever Haunted. They had stumbled into something ancient and evil, something that had lurked in the shadows of whispering pines for centuries, feeding on the fear of those unfortunate enough to cross its path. And now they were to be its latest victims. Whether they escaped the clutches of the haunted forest that night, or whether their souls became another tragic verse in its mournful song, remains a mystery. What is certain, however, is that Whispering Pines holds its secrets close, and those who dare to venture within its borders do so at their own peril. For in the heart of the forest, where shadows dance and whispers echo through the trees, evil stirs, and it hungers for the living. And sometimes, when the wind whispers just right, one can still hear their screams echoing through the trees, a chilling reminder of the darkness that lurks within the embrace of Whispering Pines.